What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on the
Welcome to
way.
Live Prayer.
It's waiting there for you.
Here's your host, Bill Keller.
You can make it through.
And welcome to Live Prayer. I am Bill Keller. Good to be with you on this Monday evening. I pray you had a good, 5 or 6 days? Got the new year started okay? Man, that was a long time. We haven't been together. It's good to be back with you once again. If you're new to the program, you're watching Live Prayer. We come to you live in living color every Monday through Friday, 11 to midnight Eastern Standard Time, wherever you're watching me tonight, all throughout this great land of ours, from sea to shining sea, border to border. Thank you for tuning in. Friends in other far-off great lands, welcome to you as well. Once again, I am Bill Keller, founder of Liveprayer.com, world's largest interactive Christian website. Reach a little over 2.5 million folks each and every day via the internet. Please check us out online, web address coming up on your screen. Liveprayer.com, liveprayer.com. Well, breath there, had to make a couple quick changes to get everything going. It's been a while. It's been a few days. Again, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026, our first program of the new year. And boy, are we starting the new year out with a doozy. I have to be honest with you. This is more content than I've ever come into a show with in the 23-year history of this TV program, okay? I mean, we've got a lot of bases to cover. I talk to you often when we have a big show about eating an elephant, how to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. We got a herd of elephants tonight, okay? And there's no way we're going to get everything cleared up tonight, but we're going to get all the major things taken care of tonight. And whatever's left over, we'll pick up tomorrow with tomorrow's news cycle, okay? So my guess is by the end of tomorrow night, we'll be all caught up. So you're going to have to watch tomorrow night too, okay? But it's good to be back together with you once again. Again, pray you had a good Christmas season, a good New Year's. Got some rest, recharged, and ready to hit 2026 out of the gate. Amen. Before we do anything, 4 things real quick I ask you to do for me each night on the program. First, pray for me in the program. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it more than you know. Second, of course, is the Live Prayer Daily Devotional. If you don't get it, sign up. It's free like everything. Go to my homepage, upper right-hand corner. You'll see a sign-up box. Click on it. It's going to ask you for a couple pieces of basic information. It'll be good to go. And it will be in your email every morning like a clock, just like it's been for over 26 years now. So make sure you get the daily devotional. Again, free. Just pray it's a great blessing to you, as it's been for millions and millions of people around the world for over a quarter century now. Third, of course, is this TV program. Now, if there was ever a program that you're going to want to try to get people interested in this, in what we do here, this will be the program tonight and tomorrow. Because in all fairness, I'm going to obviously hit a lot of the major issues tonight to get us all up to speed on that. But we've got a lot of other things that I've got on the plate tonight, and there's just no way. Now, my note takers, it's going to be a hard night for you, so I'm praying for you. We'll see how long we go. I'm just going to kind of play it by ear. My guess is we're probably going to be in the 70 to 75 minute range tonight, okay? Normally, I do my best to keep it an hour, but many nights we go 10 minutes over, whatever. We go over to get all the content covered, right? Tonight I could probably go 3 to 3.5 hours. I'm just being blunt with you, okay? But we're going to just take it easy. We're going to hit the main stuff. And like I said, we'll kind of play it by ear, but we'll cut it off at some point. And whatever's left from tonight, we will cover tomorrow. And I'll make sure the things that are left aren't like major earth-shaking issues. They can wait a day, okay? So that's where we're at. Let's have a quick word of prayer. We'll get started. Father, we're grateful for the start of another year. Thank you for bringing us through this wonderful holiday season. I pray now, Lord, as we begin in earnest the year 2026, you will watch over us throughout this year. Bless our efforts. Bring many souls to faith in Jesus and minister to your people through this program each night during this new year of 2026. Thank you for my friends who have joined me. I pray for them and their families and pray your blessings be upon them. I thank you right now, Lord, for all of the blessings of this day and for this very day itself that wasn't promised to us. And now, Lord, we commit this time to you tonight. Open our hearts, open our minds. Prepare us to hear and receive all that you have for us tonight. Understand the things we need to understand. And we praise you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Well, let's get the Kami Jihadi Mayor Mamdani, and yes, he is now Mayor Mamdani officially. Let's get his stuff out of the way right at the top, because of course he was sworn in at midnight on January 1st. New York Attorney General, the fraudulent Letitia James, swore him in, and he became the first mayor of New York City to be sworn in on the Koran. No shock there. No shock there. And just for the record, because I always get this question, no, there is no law, there's no rule, there's no regulation that says you have to be sworn in on the Bible, okay? That is a custom. It's not a law. It's not a rule. Matter of fact, the Attorney General of Minnesota that we're going to be talking about tonight, Keith Ellison, he was the first congressman to be sworn into Congress, again, on the Koran. We've had others since. And if I remember correctly, and again, I'm getting at that place in life where, some of these memories aren't quite as sharp as they need to be. But I seem to remember somebody took the oath of office, I believe it was for Congress, on a Dr. Seuss book, okay? Now, that is very disrespectful, and that's to some point where we're at as a nation now, very disrespectful, right? So he was officially sworn in as a mayor. Now, don't forget what I've told you all along. As bad as Mamdani is going to be, and he's already come out of the chute proving he's going to be a horrible mayor, the people he appoints, we're going to get to a few of them tonight, are even more radical than he is. Wait till I talk to you about this white liberal woman that he's put in charge of housing. Oh, my goodness. I've always told you that his appointees are going to be worse than him, and we're going to get to a few of those tonight. But make no mistake, and you know what? I kind of waffle because there's a part of me that feels sorry for the country as a whole, that our largest city, the largest city, greatest city, some claim in the world, is now being run by a avowed communist jihadi sympathizer. But there's part of me that says, you know what, New York, you got what you asked for. I don't want to hear you crying. I don't want to hear you moaning. I mean, we clearly told you what you were going to get if you voted for this guy. And to his credit, again, you got to give credit where credit's due. To his credit, he didn't lie about who he was. Matter of fact, the night he was sworn in, he had another swearing-in ceremony, a more public swearing-in ceremony for the people, and he made no apologies about who he is and what he is and how he's going to govern the city of New York. So now, of course, the New York Times, they gushed all over this pro-jihad, anti-Semite, commie mayor, okay? Just gushed all over him. When he had his public swearing in, that was done by Bernie and AOC. Okay, so that gives you an idea. But the New York Times, they were just effusive in their praise, and their awe of Mamdani, and their great expectations for what a great job he's going to do as mayor. Now, let me give you just a very quick history lesson, because the same New York Times, the old gray lady as she's called, right? The same New York Times in the mid-30s was equally as effusive, as praiseworthy as a new leader over in Europe by the name of Adolf Hitler. Yes, that Adolf Hitler, okay? Now, the good thing is the New York Times has a great archive. And if you're really interested, you can go search for New York Times articles on Hitler. Now, obviously, once he invaded Europe and his true intentions became, crystal clear, we're talking now 39, 40, okay, the tone did change. But if you look at the New York Times as he was rising to power in the mid-30s, early to mid-30s, and then actually became the leader of Germany, they were in love with him. They were in love with him. Now, Mamdani, I told you about the radical people he's going to appoint. He has now appointed a defense lawyer for one of the 9/11 Al-Qaeda bombers. He has appointed one of the 9/11 Al-Qaeda defense lawyers as the chief counsel for New York City, okay? Just to give you a little bit of an indication of who he's putting into power, all right? And by the way, when he had his public swearing in, he had AOC and Bernie, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 10,000 people there. I mean, listen to this. He basically invites these people to come view this ceremony, knowing that there were going to be thousands, yet they had no toilets. There was no food. There was no drink. Normally, when you have a victory party, a political victory party, the campaign, which takes in a good chunk of change, as Mamdani's did, you have some kind of hors d'oeuvres. You may not have an open bar, but you might have beer and wine available. If you're going to have 10,000 people at some kind of an outdoor venue, you're going to have facilities for the people, okay? None of that. None of that. And I know in the scheme of things that may not be a big deal, but it just shows you this guy doesn't care about the people. Never has, never will. And sadly, the people of New York are going to find out way too late. Okay? Let's see if I've got anything else. Now, in 3 days of being mayor, and this picture's all over the internet, and it's real, it's not artificial intelligence. By the way, be very careful, my friends, of pictures you see on social media, videos you see on social media. I've been reading as much as 80% of pictures and videos on social media are not real. They're AI generated for propaganda. I told you, I spend a good hour, some days 2 hours extra, just to verify things like pictures and videos and comments people make, because there's so much, true disinformation out there. But this picture's legitimate. You can find it. 3 days after being sworn in, Mamdani shut down Times Square for Muslim street prayer. And literally, there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Muslims on their knees facing east on the street right in the middle of Times Square. Now, can you imagine if Bill Keller went to the city of New York and said, City of New York, I'm Bill Keller, founder of Liveprayer.com, internet evangelist, and I want whatever kind of permit the Muslims had to pray in the middle of Times Square, on the streets, shut down the streets for blocks and blocks. I want that same permit because we're going to have a Christian prayer at Times Square in the middle of the street, just like the Muslims did. If you think you're getting a permit for a Christian prayer that's going to block off Times Square, good luck to you, my friend. Good luck to you, my friend. And it's just an example that this is a guy that is, and of course, I think he let off the prayers about Allah's so great, there's no God but Allah. Problem is, Allah doesn't exist. Allah is a mythical figment of Muhammad, of the satanically inspired Muhammad's imagination 1400 years ago, when he dreamed up this false political / religious ideology. Okay? There is no Allah. Hate to tell these guys, a little bit of a warning. There's no virgins waiting for you either. Now, we'll get to the Maduro thing, but I found it interesting. In the aftermath of the announcement that we had gone in, taken Maduro, removed him from Venezuela, bring him to New York, Mamdani was bragging about how he called President Trump and told him that he was totally opposed to this, that this was against international law. I got news for Mamdani. You're the mayor of New York. That's it. You don't have any control over foreign policy. You don't have any control over, who the federal government indicts and puts on trial. And if the indictment is in New York, guess what? The trial is going to be in New York, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you know what kills me? And again, we'll get into Maduro. Don't worry. Just listen. We're going to get a lot of content tonight, but relax. I'm not going to rush through this. Okay, that's why we got a big night tonight and a big night tomorrow to get through all this, because I want to make sure you understand these intimate details. A lot of these pieces of information you're not getting anywhere else, and that's why people watch this program. But think about this for a second. We extract a illegitimate president of Venezuela, a narco-terrorist, because he's been indicted on the worst crimes you can imagine, while we take him out of Venezuela. In return, we've got 2 new commie mayors in this country. You got Mamdani in Seattle, or Mamdani in New York, and you got this, again, white liberal woman in Seattle who's just as much of an avowed communist as Mamdani is. So we take out one rogue leader of a country, Venezuela, but at the same time, we're making 2 avowed communists mayors of 2 of the biggest cities in the country, Seattle, New York. It is absolute insanity. It really is. And then today, Mamdani appoints, and again, I just got to say it again. The biggest problem with Mamdani isn't his own personal beliefs, as messed up as they are, but it's going to be the people he appoints to run the city. Today, he appointed as the tenant advocate for New York City. You know, a woman that's going to kind of be the housing czar, if you want to use that term, right? Again, another middle-aged white female who, if you listen to her, it should scare you. Her philosophy on property is that nobody should own any property. Matter of fact, if you own property, you're a problem. And really, in not so many words, but clearly where she is going and what she is, we're going to take your property from you and give it to other people. Especially, you ready for it? Especially if you're a white property owner. Now, I know people are sitting there listening and saying, well, she can't get away with that, Bill. Really? Did you watch any of those New York trials of Trump making crimes up out of whole cloth? Crimes that didn't even exist, they made exist? Put him in front of a rogue Democrat activist judge with New York prosecutors that didn't care about what rights they violated, what the laws really were, and then put in a 97% Democratic jury pool. I mean, this woman literally wants to confiscate. Let me just bottom line it. She wants to confiscate property, especially property from white people, and redistribute it amongst the collective. Look, can I warn you about a word? I've always been good over the years of warning you about words like women's reproductive rights and women's health care and minor attracted persons. Remember that one? MAP, minor attracted persons. Instead of just calling them what they are, pedophiles, right? Whenever you hear the word collective, your antennas should go up, the red light should be spinning, the siren should be roaring, because basically when you hear the word collective, that's basically communist talk for nobody has anything. Everybody shares what they have. Shares what they have. How about that? You've got Democrats out there, by the way, over these last couple weeks that are on the record threatening ICE agents that once they get control of the government again, and they said, don't worry, there's coming a day, maybe sooner rather than later, that we're going to have control of the government. And when we do, we're coming after you. We're going to prosecute you. They're literally threatening to prosecute government agents. Now, think about this for a second. For 4 years, you had that evil clown Mayorkas, Secretary of Health and Homeland Security Secretary, left the borders wide open for 20 million people to flood in this country from all over the world, no matter who they were, what they did, why they're here. And you basically had a stand-down order on Border Patrol agents and ICE for 4 years. Nobody prosecuted them. Sadly, nobody's prosecuted Mayorkas yet. And if there's a guy that needs to be in Gitmo, he's definitely one of them. But they're out there threatening ICE agents and Border Patrol people that when we're back in power, we got your name, we're coming for you. For what? For doing their job. For basically enforcing the laws that for 4 years the Biden administration refused to enforce. A Guatemala illegal nailed for DUI 2 times. Why he was even on the street, who knows? I know in some states, that second DUI, you're going to go to jail. Killed an 8-year-old. The father driving the car was a Marine who had his leg amputated and is critical condition. The mother was hurt, but she's going to recover. And there were also 2 little boys in the car that apparently are going to be okay. But here's an illegal, drunk out of his mind, head into a car with a Marine, father driving, again, who had his leg amputated and is in critical condition. We don't know if he's going to recover. Pray for him. The mother in the car was hurt, but she's going to be okay. 2 little boys survived the crash, but it killed an 8-year-old girl. And I've told you many, many times over the years, I could literally sit here 2 to 3 hours every night, and read you one of the read you these type of accounts nonstop. Unbelievable. All right, let's get Somalia out of the way. And Timmy Wolf, boy, we got some CCP Timmy news. By the way, I'm going to talk about this later, but just a little hint. I got a feeling CCP Timmy might be heading back to his beloved China. We'll get into that in just a minute. But just so you understand, and I want to reemphasize this, and I made this point many times in our few programs last week, that the Somali fraud in Minneapolis is simply a symptom of a much greater problem. Because the type of fraud they were perpetrating on our social service operations to help people that need help, right? That's been happening forever. It's just been highlighted because it's been so grotesque in Minneapolis with the Somali community. By the way, there's a smaller Somali community in Ohio, in Maine, in Pennsylvania, in Washington State, and guess what? They all have the same fraud issue. Okay? They all have the same fraud issue with the daycare and different things. Don't forget, all these social programs are being raped. I told you last week, I would be shocked if even half of the money actually goes to what those programs are set up to take care of. I firmly believe over half of the money, trillions of dollars every year, are eaten up by fraud. By far the worst program that gets hit every year for the most amount of money is Medicare, Medicaid. And yes, we got some Somalis involved in that. Matter of fact, the UN Defense Council has rotating heads. I think every year they change to another country's ambassador gets to be the head of the UN agent, the UN agency that looks after wars and things like that, right? This time it happened to be, on January 1st, it happened to be a Somali gentleman that's now the head of that UN agency. And listen to this. He's got Medicare fraud issues in his past. Yet he's the ambassador to the UN from Somalia. And by virtue of being the ambassador to the UN by Somalia, His number came up January 1st to be the, head of the UN Defense Agency. And they're the ones, by the way, that are going to be looking at all this Venezuela nonsense. Can I just say something real quick? I don't have this in my notes. I wasn't even going to go here. But as long as we're talking about the UN, we need to get out of the UN now. Why are we still there? We fund a good chunk of the UN. It is nothing but a globalist operation full of fraud that makes Minneapolis Somalis look like choir children, okay? Global fraud, sexual harassment. It is just a disgusting organization. I say we get out tomorrow, not another dime. And we send the United Nations an eviction notice. You got 60 days to vacate that property in New York City because we're going to blow it up and turn it into something decent. Just a thought. Again, there's all kinds of reports now out of Seattle of Somalia daycare operations involved in the same fraud. Again, like I said, the Somalis are probably in the news and because they just didn't give a darn. They didn't care. They stole and laughed about it, flaunted it. Rolls Royces, Bentleys, vacations, new $1 million houses. They flaunted it in people's faces and laughed at it. But when you're talking about this kind of fraud that's involved in our social programs, the Somali fraud is just the tip of the iceberg. It really is. Really is. By the way, listen to this one. Over the holidays, in one of these Minneapolis daycare operations, you had an 18-year-old Somali guy who was the quote-unquote manager who sat there and with a straight face talked about how they were broken into the night before, their daycare was broken the night before, and somebody stole all their records. They don't have any more records of all their children and all of their finances, and somebody broke in and stole it all. Said it with a straight face, too. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And in essence, with the media's obviously assistance, they're now trying to turn the Somali community into the victims. Even though they ripped off billions of dollars of taxpayer money, they are now the victims. We're supposed to feel sorry for them. By the way, the state of Minnesota, I promise you, as we're talking over the holidays, they've been in 1,000% cover-up mode. Emails, text messages, documents, all being destroyed, I guarantee you. Now, that's not going to stop the investigations and prosecutions, but as a matter of fact, they're probably going to get some obstruction of justice charges added to whatever their charges may be, okay? But I promise you, they're trying to destroy everything possible. And then they'll blame it on, somebody broke in and stole our records. Yeah. By the way, a player in this whole Somali story emerged that most people never heard of. Her name is Amy Brock. Now, if that doesn't sound Somali, bingo, you're right. She's not. She's a middle-aged white woman, of all things. Imagine that. Amy Brock. By the way, as I'm speaking to you now, Amy Brock is in custody of the federal government in Minnesota, awaiting sentencing in the next couple months, okay? Now, who's Amy Brock? Turns out she was the ringleader of the first Somali scam, which was that COVID feeding program for children. Yeah, she was the mastermind of that scam. And she suckered these Somalis into the scam. In other words, she was the ringleader. The program was called Feed Our Future. And she was, again, the ringleader who basically orchestrated that whole scam to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars during the COVID time. And I remember reporting on this back then. This is 3-4 years ago when this was uncovered. But she then used the Somali community to run the scam through, figuring that they wouldn't be looked at as closely. And if they were looked at, the Democratic politicians that control Minnesota get lots of votes from Somalis, so they're probably going to look the other way. She was right. And people really aren't going to want to go after the Somali community too hard because they'll be called racist, xenophobes, Islamophobes, every other phobe you can name. And she was right. But Amy Brock's fraud doesn't end with the feeding program. Oh, no. Turns out she is the administrative contact for 47 of the Somali daycare centers. In other words, if you were looking for an administrative contact for some of these Somali daycare centers, 47 to be exact, the administrative contact was, guess who? Amy Brock. Yeah. Now, she went on trial back in March, and she was convicted. And again, she was out on bond for her trial, but the second she was convicted, the judge immediately ordered her to be held pending sentencing. The judge is trying to recover from her personally over $5 million. They got a Porsche, a bunch of electronics and clothing. So Amy Brock, this white liberal woman, seems to be one of the main players in a lot of the Somali fraud. Now, I'm sure once the fraud was ongoing, other Somalis that didn't want to be given Amy Brock a cut of their take, so to speak, I'm sure they just started pulling this fraud on their own. But she was at least in the initial phases the ringleader of a lot of this. Then you got the YouTuber, Nick Shirley. He's now getting death threats. You got CNN and others in the corporate media that are going after him. They're actually stoking the violent threats against Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old YouTuber, okay, slandering him, saying that what he put out was false and blah, blah, blah. In other words, feeding into the hatred against this guy for doing nothing. And the funny thing was, I listened to an interview he did the other day on a podcast, and he was saying that, listen, he's 23, he's still a virgin, he doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs, is very serious about his faith in Jesus. And he says, they don't have anything they can come after me with. And that's true, they don't. He's clean. But that doesn't stop the media because they just make things up. It's called slander. And it's terrible what they're doing to this kid. It really is. Let's see here. Got any more Somali stuff? And then this afternoon, minding my own business, putting the program together, and all of a sudden, I get some notices, the Hilton hotel chain in Minnesota apparently was there's a surge of ICE officers into Minnesota. They're really serious about going in there and cleaning up the illegals out of Minnesota. And they're probably going to be there for a few weeks. Apparently, they're putting the ICE officers up at Hilton Inns around Minneapolis. All of a sudden, a bunch of ICE officers started getting their reservations for their room canceled. And it soon became known that when they questioned why they were being canceled, they were getting responses from these Hilton hotels that we are not going to allow people like you to stay on our property. In other words, because you're an ICE agent, we're not going to let you stay here. Now, I got to be honest with you. When I heard that, because the Hilton hotel conglomerate, there's like probably 30 some different hotels, hotel names that are all owned by Hilton, okay? If you're interested, go to Google and Google hotels under the Hilton chain. And you'll see probably out of 30, probably 20 of the hotels you recognize, they don't say Hilton, so you had no idea Hilton owned them, okay? I knew when this happened, I said, I think by dinner time, Hilton's going to be responding to this. Well, I was off a little bit. It was about 30 minutes that Hilton's people got on this. And of course, they issued the standard apology thing, saying that these are independently owned properties. This is not how Hilton does business. We love our government workers. Because you can only imagine Hilton, like all these hotel chains, have massive contracts with the federal government. Department of Agriculture, Department of War. Name any of the government agencies. I'm sure they've got lots of people on the road all the time, staying at various hotel chains. I'm sure Hilton, being one of the biggest, has got lots of government contracts. So they were in damage control mode. And apparently, from what I heard right before I got on the air, is now these officers that had reservations, their reservations were being reinstated. But just goes to show you, right? Just goes to show you. That whether it's debanking, taking you off social media platforms, not letting you stay at hotels. If these people ever get back in power, folks, okay? Because Hilton knew that Trump was going to blow a gasket. But when there's no Trump, when it's a bunch of globalists, the illegitimate Biden regime for 4 years, they'll get away with this kind of stuff. By the way, do you remember about 6 months ago, there was a judge and her husband that were assassinated at their front door. Do you remember that? It was a judge and her husband, and the killer was a lone wolf, always a lone wolf, but he'd actually been on one of CCP Timmy's governor's council for something, so he had an association with the Wolf's administration. But he walked up. He tried to kill one judge and her husband, but they lived. He went to another judge's house, shot her, the judge, a woman, and her husband. They both died. Turns out that the judge who was killed, the woman judge who was killed, she was involved in some of these early Somali fraud prosecutions. Now, I'm not connecting any dots. I'm not making any leaps. I'm just saying that we never had did get a motive for why this guy shot these two people. Just saying with everything, look, everything else. Hey, listen, is killing a couple judges worth keeping a multi-billion-dollar fraud operation from becoming public? Would people do that? They kill people for a heck of a lot less. Trust me. Trust me. And then, of course, today we find out that China Timmy is going to resign. He's going to resign. He's not going to run for a third term. Okay? He's got a year left. The resign part of it is my thought. I don't think he's going to stick around for the final year because I think there's going to be so much heat on him. He's going to resign. Now, here's an interesting thing. He had cooked up a deal with Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota. Okay, he had cooked up a deal with her that he was going to resign. He was not going to run. She's going to run for governor. She's going to get elected because it is a pretty hardcore Democratic state now, believe it or not. But after she gets elected as the governor, that means her Senate seat's going to be open. She's then going to appoint China Timmy to that seat. Okay? Now, that was the plan over the weekend. Apparently that plan leaked, and that's now off the table. But this is how these people think. This is how these people think. And, of course, you got Ellison, the Attorney General, running again for another term there. Mike Lindell, Mr. Pillow, he's running for governor of Minnesota. So it's very interesting how this whole Minnesota political situation is going to play out in the coming months. Now that you've got Waltz not running again, I believe he's going to resign way before he's got a year to go. I believe he's going to resign way before that. Just watch. And I'll tell you something else. I said at the beginning of the program, I would not be shocked to see Timmy Waltz disappear and reappear in China, his beloved China. I know that sounds crazy, but the guy did make 38 trips there. My gut is he is a definitely captured asset of the CCP. And the heat's going to get turned up on Timmy. He's going to be before Congress next week, forced to answer questions about all this fraud. He and Ellison. Of course, they're just going to dance and showboat, but they're going to come after him. And I think if it looks like they're going to get him, I could see him taking off to China. We'll see. Time will tell. I'll remind you, though, later when he pops up in Shanghai. One last thing about this whole Somali thing. Listen to this. And this just shows you what an absolute joke the Somali people think this country is. Okay? I told you, their arrogance is unbelievable. The home of the auditing firm that performs audits for virtually all of the Minnesota and Ohio NGOs linked to the feeding fraud, the daycare fraud, okay? The home of the auditing firm that performs all the audits for the Minnesota and Ohio NGOs that are the shells for these fraudulent daycare centers, feeding operation. They're based in Columbus, Ohio. And no, they're not in an office building. They're in a commercial building called the Juba Value Center. Now, Juba is a river in Somalia, okay? But the sign for this business says travel and computer services provided. Doesn't say anything about auditing expertise, CPAs, because, that would be a kind of a CPA function, right? None of that. It's in a building that looks like a worn down electronics store from the 70s, if you remember those kind of places. Unbelievable. So let's get to, tomorrow's January 6th, by the way, the 5th anniversary, January 6th. Please don't miss tomorrow night's program. I've got some January 6th stuff you've got to hear. The fact that it's tomorrow is good timing, because I'll hold the January 6th stuff until tomorrow. But you need to watch the program tomorrow night, because I've got a lot of January 6th stuff. Now, I sat here on this program 6 weeks ago and told you it wasn't a matter of if, only when Trump went into Venezuela to get Maduro. They didn't put that armada on the shores of Venezuela just because they needed a place to park their ships, okay? I mean, it was obvious he was going after Maduro. How, when, what method they used, that was all up in the air. But they weren't there, like I said, just to hang out and take pictures. All right? As you know, early Sunday morning, Saturday and Sunday morning, our special forces went into Venezuela. First thing they did was they shut all the lights and internet off. They went in and shut the lights and internet off in the whole country of Venezuela. Well, how'd they do that, Bill? Well, not only did they, but there are countries out there that could do that to us. Now, that alone is considered an act of war. Okay? Really is. I mean, just think about it. Somebody came and shut off all the power, all the water, all the internet to the United States. I mean, within an hour, we would be back in the Stone Age. And could other countries do that? Absolutely. Could we do it to them? Absolutely. So that was their first thing. And then once everything was dark, then they did their thing. They knew exactly where he was. Apparently, he had 8 safe houses, and they've been watching the monitors, I guess, for a couple nights. I think Trump originally wanted to do this on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, but the weather wasn't right one night. They didn't have 100%. Again, they had to know 100% he was going to be where they thought he was, because this is a one-time shot. And apparently they had good intel. They knew where he was, he and his wife, and they went and got him. Apparently from the time they entered the house, from what I understand, within 3 minutes they had him, and they were dragging them out, onto a helicopter, took him to one of our ships. Took him to an airfield somewhere, got on an airplane, went to New York, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. There were 32 Cuban guards that were at the scene, and 32 Cuban guards that were killed at the scene. No U.S. casualties. Apparently we had a couple of injuries, but nothing life-threatening. And like I said, they got him out of Venezuela, put him on one of our ships, That ship went to some airstrip somewhere, put him on a plane, him and his wife, flew him to New York, landed there, got on a helicopter, and ended up at being booked at the DEA. And then they're being housed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Brooklyn, which from what I understand is an absolute hellhole. He's being charged with all kinds of gun charges, trafficking tons of cocaine, not kilos, tons, okay? I mean, he's looking at the rest of his life in prison if he's convicted. By the way, before I say anything else, kudos to our military. Apparently, this is something that they've been practicing for months now, working on every detail. Apparently, they had actual models of his various safe houses. They were practicing the extraction, getting in, taking out whatever bodyguards were there that were going to put up a fight, right? And then getting Maduro and his wife. Apparently, they were when they got them, they were just steps away from a safe room with some kind of huge steel door. Trump said even if they would have made it into the safe room, that door would have been down in about, I think he said 2 or 3 minutes. But they got him before they could get in and shut the door. So flawless. Just like taking out the nuke sites of Iran was flawless, another flawless military operation. Now, let me give you some insight into this. And a lot of this stuff you're not hearing anywhere else. Why, I don't know. And I'm talking about even the conservative media ecosystem. I've heard some bits and pieces, but not really. Yes, Trump wants to stop the drug trafficking. No doubt about that. That's the macro goal, okay? But Trump is also personally peeved beyond imagination that during the 4 years of Biden, Venezuela shipped, who knows the total number, but well over 1 million Trinidad gang members into the United States through Biden's open borders. And on top of that, emptied their mental wards and sent them to the United States. How many times, as Trump was running for president in 24, how many of those rallies, how many of his interviews did he talk about how they're emptying their jails, emptying their insane asylums, sent them to, he was talking about Venezuela because that's exactly what they did. Laken Riley, her killer was Venezuela. TDA. Little Jocelyn Hungary, little 12-year-old girl in Houston that they lured out of her house in the late night, took her under a bridge, raped her over and over and over, bashed her head in with a rock, left her in a ditch. Those are TDA. Yeah, those are some of Maduro's, good buddies that he shipped to the United States. Do not underestimate how that played into this whole thing. Trump didn't talk about this 1,000. If he talked about it once, he talked about it 1,000 times. Also, another issue that you're not hearing about involved in this whole Venezuela thing. The day before they went and got Maduro and his wife, Maduro was in meetings with Chinese representatives. China, like I said, has been all over South America. And they had all kinds of various operations in Venezuela, as did Iran, as did Russia. That factors into this too. because one of the goals is to get the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians and anybody else out of our hemisphere. It used to be called the Monroe Doctrine. Now they're calling it the Donroe Doctrine. But that played a big factor in this. Trust me when I tell you. Now, one thing that got people a little discombobulated, Trump said many times, well, we're going to run Venezuela and we're taking the oil. Now, there are judgments for billions of dollars in international courts that Venezuela owns various U.S. oil companies, billions of dollars from unpaid bills and things like that. What does run Venezuela mean? I don't think any of us knows yet. We're going to find out. One thing, though, I can honestly tell you it means is they're going to run the oil sector of Venezuela. That is without a doubt. Trump even said if we have to put, U.S. troops on the ground to guard the oil fields, we'll do that. I mean, so they definitely have pinpointed. Venezuela has some of the greatest oil reserves that have never been tapped anywhere in the world. Okay? That includes Anwar up in Alaska, the Saudi fields. The problem you've got, though, with the Venezuela oil, it's called heavy crude and requires special refining techniques. And again, to refine that oil, these oil companies have to invest billions of dollars to refine the oil. So we'll be keeping an eye, but first and foremost, running Venezuela means controlling their oil sector. As far as future leaders go, right now you've got the vice president running Venezuela, Maduro's vice president. She's a nasty woman, by the way. Her family is like, would be the equivalent of mafioso type people, okay? Gang mentality, brutal people, okay? She's no shrinking violet. But right now, she's been left in charge under the supervision of the United States. Now, she hates the United States. She says they need to bring Maduro back. She's not totally on board, but I think the way that they took Maduro and his wife, she's being a little bit cautious initially to see how involved the United States is going to be. All right. You've got that woman that won the Nobel Peace Prize, Machado. Now, Trump says she has no credibility with the Venezuelan people. And there's some truth to that. She's not equipped to walk in and set up a government. Okay? Technically, they need to get the entire Maduro government out. And many of those people, by the way, are under U.S. indictment. But their focus a couple nights ago was just to get Maduro and his wife. So there's other people in his regime in power tonight that are also under indictment. I mean, ultimately, they need to get that regime out of power. But here you go. Tonight, right before I got on the program, I was reading a quick blip that there's a lot of unrest in Venezuela on the streets. You do have a power vacuum, right? You do have a power vacuum, and there's a lot of interests that want to fill that power vacuum. Where's the military go? Like I've always told you, in these countries, whoever controls the military becomes the leader. Apparently right now the military is staying with the vice president who was sworn in to lead Venezuela for this moment in time. So it's going to be very interesting to see outside of the oil sector, what the Trump administration does to get Venezuela back on track as a free democracy again. Now, in addition to the vice president in charge now, the Machado woman that is basically had to leave the country for fear for her life, you also had a presidential election just 15 months ago? And there was a winner, and it wasn't Maduro. Now, he basically overturned the election, stole it, just like Biden did. So you've got that guy walking around too that's probably going to be coming back looking to, take power. So there's a big power vacuum. There's going to be a big struggle. It's going to be interesting to see how the U.S. Works around all of that. I got to tell you something. As far as Maduro, if he's convicted, I pray he gets the death penalty. Not just for his crimes against his own people, but the untold millions around the world that are dead because of his drug operations that have been going on for decades now. Don't forget, Hugo Chavez destroyed Venezuela. Venezuela used to be one of the diamonds in the world. It was a rich country because of oil, had a big middle class. A lot of people in Venezuela have lots of money. Then Chavez came in 99 and turned it socialist, and that's when you had a lot of Venezuelans fleeing Venezuela, coming to America. And within about 5 to 6 years, you had Venezuelan people broke, no money, literally eating zoo animal. I'll never forget the night on this program that I shared the story how you had people breaking into the zoo, killing zoo animals for food. I mean, you want to talk about ultimate desperation? So the socialist communist ideology has been infesting Venezuela now for basically a quarter century. So, but it can come back quick because of the oil. The same thing that made it rich before can make it rich again. And you have a lot of Venezuelans around the world that are kind of on a wait and see now. Glad Maduro's gone, but until you know who's going to be running the country, not much has really changed there. By the way, as the U.S. was going in Saturday night to take Maduro and his wife, one of their targets that night, which they hit, was the mausoleum of Hugo Chavez. He died, 10 years ago, I think now? Sean Penn, that goofball actor, loved Hugo Chavez. He was nothing but a communist drug dealer himself, okay? But apparently he had one of these huge mausoleums built to where he's entombed, and that mausoleum is now rubble because it was bombed by one of our U.S. bombers and turned that mausoleum into rubble. Let's see what else we got. Oh, and then as they were bringing Maduro into New York City to take him to the federal detention center in Brooklyn, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, Brooklyn, you had pro-Maduro protesters on the streets of New York lining the route that the cars would be going down to take him to Brooklyn's Metropolitan Correctional Center. You had pro-Maduro protesters on the streets. And they were urged on by guess who? Yep, that's right, Mayor Mamdani. He encouraged people to get out there and protest. Now, he had his arraignment today. And here's something else I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing, but you're going to hear it, because these are things that I promise you need to be considered. Maduro, for whatever you think about him, ran that country for the last 6 or 7 years since Chavez's death. And he was intimately involved with China, with Russia, with Iran, with Cuba, okay? And he knows things about all of those countries, all obvious foes of the United States. I'm sure he's got some real juicy insight into all of those countries that would kind of be invaluable. But on top of that, he also knows what politicians, not only from countries around the world, but in the United States, have had their hand in the Venezuela drug cookie jar. I promise you right now, and if there's some Republicans, so be it. But I promise you right now, there's some Democrats that are not sleeping well tonight. And Maduro knows every one of those people. And then you've got the issue of the rogue voting machines, Smartmatic, that were basically built in Venezuela, constructed to be able to cheat in the elections so they could basically put into office whoever they wanted to using these rogue voting machines. Those are the same rogue voting machines that we're now using in the United States. And I promise you, Maduro knows all about that. Matter of fact, he probably knows a lot about the 2020 stolen election. Now, ask yourself something. He's looking at life in prison. But he's got some bargaining chips. I could see it would be something only a Donald Trump would or could do. I could see Donald Trump having Maduro brought to, I don't know, Trump Tower, feeding him lunch, and then sitting down and debriefing him and saying, okay, Maduro, unless you want to rot in prison or maybe even get the death penalty, you better start talking about China, Iran, Russia, Cuba. You better start talking about those Smartmatic voting machines that were designed specifically for Venezuelan elections and then used in the United States. And what you may know about the 2020 stolen election. And you might want to just jot down a little list off of memory of what U.S. politicians have had their fingers in the Venezuelan cookie jar. I could see something like that going down. I could. And I could see Maduro playing ball. He doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison. And I'm telling you right now, Trump would cut him a deal if he gave him critical information about the plans of China or Cuba or Iran in South America, of which he would have great knowledge of. I can guarantee you, Trump would cut him a deal if Maduro could prove, if the 2020 election was, if he could prove that, just even through the machine angle, forget all the mail-out ballots and all that other stuff, if he could just prove it through the machines, I could see Trump giving him a deal. Letting him go live the rest of his life in Russia or something like that, like they did Bashar al-Assad when they kicked him out of Syria. Now he's living in in Sochi, Russia. I could see him letting Maduro live his days out in Russia or someplace like that if he could give him solid, information on issues like this. Could see it in a second. And I got to tell you something. Based on knowing all that, I don't know if I'd want to be Maduro right now. I think I'd be sleeping with an eye open. Unless he ended up, killing himself like Epstein did. Because I guarantee you there's a lot of people in the drug world, in the election world, in the world of global takeovers of continents like South America. I can tell you there's a lot of people in those worlds that have been dealing with Maduro on an intimate basis, probably aren't sleeping well, and would love to see him not be able to talk. Just throwing some things out there that you ought to be watching for. And then again, today, as he went to court for his arraignment, you had more pro-Maduro protesters. Now listen, when you see these people, again, mostly white women, sorry, it's just true. Look for yourself, I'm not making it up. But when you see these people like protesting in favor of an animal like Maduro, and they got these beautiful printed signs. Those signs aren't free, folks. Okay? It's not like buying the San Francisco Bridge or anything like that. But it still costs money. There's still logistics to print them up. What are you going to say on the signs? All that stuff. That's professional. Okay? That's not a bunch of amateurs. And let's say there is no deal that Maduro's able to cut with Trump or his administration, and he goes to trial. Number one, this trial isn't going to be for a year and a half or so, and I'm basing that on the 89 Noriega situation, very similar in that respect. But here's the other thing. You got a 92-year-old Clinton-appointed judge that hates Trump that's got this case. Maduro's going to have the best legal defense team money could buy. Okay? And don't forget, one reason that the feds have like a 98% win rate isn't because they go into court and they lay down some mad legal skills and win these cases. It's because 98% of the cases the feds try are plea bargained. These federal prosecutors rarely are in court. And whenever they are in court against highly polished, highly skilled defense lawyers, that's why they often lose. So you've got a 92-year-old Clinton-appointed judge that hates Trump. You got U.S. attorneys that are going to be prosecuting this case that probably aren't 1/10 the lawyers their defense counterparts are. Okay? And then you're going to have a jury pool of 95, 96% New York jury pool hates Trump, hates anything about Trump or his administration. All I'm saying is, he might get acquitted. How about that? It couldn't happen very many, but it could happen in New York, though. D.C. or New York, he could get acquitted. That's why I was shocked they didn't have the case in Florida where they wouldn't have to go through all those stacked deck as far as judges, jury pools, all that stuff. One last thing about this for tonight. The Dems have been out all day saying that you can't go around arresting the presidents of countries And I got to tell you something. As soon as I heard that, I started thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You can't go around arresting president of countries, yet that's exactly what the Democrats did to Trump. Flagrant hypocrites. The CNN and the Washington Post, they're out there actively pushing narratives to pressure entertainers to have nothing to do with the Trump Kennedy Center. Okay? There's not one thing Trump does that these people would support. You might have heard it, and I agree. If he found the cure, if Trump himself found the cure to cancer tomorrow, the media and the Democrats would be rooting for cancer. Serious. Heck, they root for crime. They're fine with crime. They're fine with illegals here if they're raping and murdering, wives and sisters and girlfriends and children, right? Fine supporting the illegals. They're actually out there defending the Somali fraudsters. Listen, Trump's out there every day trying to bring peace to the world, and everything he does, even something as innocuous as this Kennedy Center, the media is on him so fast. Let me tell you something. When Trump took office this time, that building, the Kennedy Center, was in disrepair. It's falling apart. The Kennedy family hadn't been there in decades. The finances of the center were in shambles. They were paying a bunch of Democratic loyalists huge salaries, and the thing was losing millions of dollars every year. But they didn't care. They don't care if things lose money. They've never run anything that was run like a real business. So Trump went in, fixed the building, put a new board together, cleaned up the finances. But now you've got the media out there basically pressuring entertainers, don't you dare go perform there. By the way, in addition to Venezuela, you got some other places you need to be thinking about. Cuba, I'm serious. I've always wondered why the United States didn't make a run for Cuba. Before Castro took over, in the years prior to Castro's rise to power and controlling Cuba, there was a lot of talk about making Cuba the 51st state. We had a lot of U.S. interests down there. But watch Cuba. Colombia, the guy running Colombia thinks he's a real smart guy, telling Trump to come get him like he got Maduro. You're a coward. You don't have the guts to come take me, blah, blah, blah. That's the head of Colombia, which, of course, is the cocaine capital of the world. But being next to Venezuela, I don't see him messing with Colombia so much right now. Cuba, I think, is on the radar. Panama Canal, I think we're okay now that we've got the Chinese pretty much out of the way down there. But that's still something that may happen down the road to ensure we have control of the Panama Canal again. And then you got Greenland. And I know the Danes are going crazy. But you know what? If Trump is going to really go and take Greenland, I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to make a deal with the people of Greenland because they've got so many resources that have never even been touched. Rare earth minerals, oil, gas reserves, none of that's ever been touched. And he's going to make a deal with the people that, hey, you're going to get X% of everything we get as far as natural resources out of Greenland. And if he gets the people on his side, the Danes aren't going to be able to do anything about it. So, Cuba, Panama Canal, keep an eye on. Greenland, definitely keep an eye on. And Colombia could come into play at some point. By the way, in the meantime, the people of Iran are revolting. They don't have any money. The mullah spent all their money on themselves and the IRG, the army. Don't forget, got to pay the army if you're going to run a dictatorship, a totalitarian government. It only works if you control the army. So they're getting paid well. And a lot of that money goes to their terror proxies. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Israel, right? So people are broke, they're starving, they're rioting. Now Trump has told the mullahs, if you start shooting live rounds into the protesters, we're gonna say something. So we'll see what's going on with Iran. You had more Christians over New Year's executed by Muslims. Okay, for the media. No, that's not. A talking point or paranoia that's really happening. Okay. The only way you're going to save Europe, folks, they've got to do what Trump's doing, mass deportations, go back to fossil fuels for energy, and stop the censorship. By the way, you had a pedophile in the UK who was, he was caught. And he went to trial, and he lost, and he went to and he's going to prison for pedophilia. Okay? But guess what? You had 3 people on social media protesting the short amount of time that this pedophile is getting, right? A migrant who sexually assaulted a child. 3 people online protested the short sentence. They got charged for hate speech, and they're going to serve longer jail times than the migrant who sexually assaulted a child. That's how messed up Europe is, folks. And then you had an attempted break-in into J.D. Vance's home in Cincinnati. I guess he still has a home there. And it turns out it's a mentally ill man named William DeFore, who was very upset when he was being arrested because he told the police, "My name is Julia." Here you go. Some more trans violence. Of course, funny. I saw the various coverage of this. Nobody wanted to mention he was a mentally ill man who thought he was a woman. Just left that all out. And then in France, you got 10 people who are going to prison for cyberbullying. Guess who they cyberbullied? Brigitte Macron. Macron's supposed wife, who's 24 years older than him, who many people claim was a man. And because these people made those accusations and asked those questions, is Brigitte really a man? Those 10 people are now in prison in France. That's what I'm talking about, the censorship between the migrant influx that started back in 2014, the dependency on the green energy scam that killed the economies of European countries, and the overt censorship that's taking place now for the globalists trying to hold on to power. Unless you fix those things, the European countries, many people don't recognize them now with their no-go zones and things like that. Lastly, tonight we'll end on this one. Mark Kelly. He's losing ranks. It is only a matter of time now before he is recalled to active duty. He will face a court-martial for that insane, traitorous video that he and 4 other Democrats put together, basically telling our troops you don't have to listen to the commander-in-chief's orders. Okay. If nothing else, he's going to lose a lot of ranks, which obviously affects his retirement pay and things like that, right? But if they go for a full court martial, he could actually end up in the brig, Leavenworth, Gitmo, somewhere like that. And of course, he's as obstinate as ever, arrogant, acting all big and bad. Well, we'll see how big and bad he is once he gets a bunch of his ranks knocked down. He's called back to active duty, and he's actually sitting before a military tribunal for being a traitor to his country. All right, good night tonight. We believe it or not, we got through a whole bunch of those elephants tonight. I've got a bunch of January 6th stuff that will obviously wait till tomorrow, the actual 5-year anniversary of January 6th. You don't want to miss that. But for the most part, we've pretty much caught up on everything. I got to be honest with you, for the last 4 days, I have been, just nonstop. There's been so much stuff going on. But we've got January 6th to get to tomorrow night. I've still got a few loose ends to deal with. I talked to you about Bongino, now officially gone from the FBI. I need to talk about that. I want to talk to you tomorrow night about the Dilbert cartoonist Scott Adams, who's basically on his deathbed with inoperable cancer. But he had a very interesting video about converting to Christianity. I do want to talk about that. Got a little bit of war updates. They'll wait till tomorrow. Okay. That's about it. Like I said, we did a good job tonight. Okay. So you're pretty well caught up with a lot of the details, especially a lot of the details that you're just not hearing about. I don't know why some of these issues people aren't digging in deeper to some of these issues, like the whole Somali fraud being the tip of the iceberg, like Maduro having so many moving parts to it, not just what's happening in Venezuela with him gone, but what information he may be able to provide to keep himself out of spending the rest of his days in prison. So, got a lot to cover over these coming days and weeks. So make sure you tune in each night. You'll get the latest and the most informed details on all these issues. Right? All right, before we get out of here tonight, if you never made a decision for Jesus, let me give you a chance to do that right now, because when this brief journey is over, all that matters, do you have a relationship with Christ? If you've never made that decision, why don't you pray with me now? Dear Lord, I come to you tonight, asking you to forgive me of all my sins. Lord, this night I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and tonight I surrender myself to you. Now and forevermore, my life belongs to you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. My friend, if you prayed and you meant it, the Bible says you're saved, not because you said a few words, because of your faith in God's grace, Ephesians 2:8-9. Have a book I'll send you, won't cost you anything. Drop me an email, bkellerliveprayer.com. I'll get it out to you. If you need prayer for anything, please don't hesitate to email me, bkellerliveprayer.com. All right. Love and care about you so much. Good to be back with you once again. We're back to a normal week. Hallelujah. It was a long couple of weeks, just saying. But good to be back and into the grind. And Lord willing, back here tomorrow night, 11 o'clock Eastern. for more live prayer. God bless you.
What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it